I wanted to talk about crop deaths. So this is like the vegan massacre that a lot of carnists will bring up, uh, claiming that vegans are hypocritical. So first, I'd like to just sort of just bring up or like regurgitate some of the points that are often regurgitated, um, because I think they're worth regurgitating. There's a reason that they keep getting brought up. Number one is that animal agriculture accounts for more crop deaths than uh, plant agriculture does. Um, and this is pretty indisputed. There's a couple of people that will claim otherwise, but I think they are very flawed in their assessment. So, number one, if we care about crop deaths, animal agriculture accounts for more crop deaths than plant agriculture does. Um, Number two, the types of death on crops on cropland is often a different kind of death. Um, it's a death from the protection of uh, property. Uh, it often calls something like a rights violation. So yeah, so there's a couple of now we can sort of get into the nitty gritty. My like actual position. So, um, just on the face value that animal agriculture causes more crop deaths, uh, sort of to me tells me that you should be vegan, just that alone, right? But let's go kind of deeper into this, right? So the the aspect of protecting property is very interesting to me because, like, right, like if someone breaks into your home and starts stealing food, like, sure, you kind of have a right to sort of protect your property, right? You can tell them to, you can yell at them, you can call the police, and worst comes to worst, they're not leaving and they're still taking all your food, you could probably shoot them. Um, I think that would be justified, right? Um, in some cases. But imagine someone comes into your house and they start like stealing all your food and causing some sort of threat to your life. Um, and rather than like yelling at them to leave, um, or perhaps calling the police, or if worse comes to worse, pulling out a gun or something, you you run up to them, you like choke them, or like start stabbing them repeatedly. It's like, so like, surely, um, does the suffering fit the crime, right? You don't want to throw someone in a torture chamber for eternity just because they came into your house, um, and started stealing your food. Um, so it appears that certain aspects of crop deaths, these animals are not killed in sort of, hey, leave from my house sort of ways. Um, Oftentimes they're killed in very gruesome ways. Rodenticide specifically is very, very gruesome. So what do we do about this? Right? It seems like if we care about animal suffering, then we should care about crop deaths. Despite crop deaths not being an argument against veganism or like an argument for eating animal products, it's still an issue. So what do we do about it? Um, now, now it seems like most of us don't own farmland, right? And it's very hard to tell, oftentimes, which farmlands actually partake in these practices. In fact, most of them do, right? It's sort of systemic. Um, and there's certain things you can do, like you can maybe um avoid certain aspects of like organic farming and things like this. But so yeah, what do we do about it? And I think I actually think one of the biggest issues is that the way that the society views animals, right? Society still kind of views animals as things that don't really at least farm animals, right? It's like they don't really deserve sort of moral consideration, right? Um, so they're more likely to be, um, they're farmers are more likely to protect their crops in more gruesome ways. So I I think by furthering the vegan message and continuing to eat vegan products and continuing to spread the word that veganism is a net benefit for the animals, that as that becomes more accepted, we will see less gruesome crop deaths, and we'll see more things like fences. We'll see more things like actually looking for animals as you're tilling the soil, right? As you're tilling the ground, you, looking around, trying to avoid animals, right? Um, so yeah, that's sort of my main thought is that, like, the more uh, 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 um, vegan society becomes, the less gruesome crop deaths we will have. Um, so it's just kind of, crop deaths is just like a bigger. It's an argument for veganism, right? It's like, you want to reduce animal suffering. Look at this reduction. Look at this animal suffering. Be vegan so you can reduce this animal suffering. Um, yeah, another aspect is that there will always be crop deaths, right? We can reduce it drastically, but there will always be crop deaths. Okay, so how do we justify that? Right, we live in a vegan society. We're having these crops. We've reduced a lot of the suffering, but there's still suffering and crop deaths. How do we justify it? Um, well, there. Okay, I don't want to have this sort of like, there's always going to be suffering cope, but that's kind of what I'm going at, right? So there will always be suffering, right? It's just, uh does the well-being outweigh the suffering, right? Um, try and get the suffering as low as it can go, right? And try and get that well-being as high as it can go. And if if in order to maximize well-being we need food, and in order to have food, some amount of death or some amount of suffering is required. It appears that probably the death of farming crops is going to be the most sustainable way uh, at having a maximized well-being population. Um, yeah, having a maximized well-being population while keeping suffering as low as possible. So yeah, that's crop deaths. It's an argument. Crop deaths is the problem of crop deaths is an argument for veganism.